All right, today on our show's Leaders in Cars Getting Coffee, we have Julius van der Laar. His claim to fame is that he worked with the Barack Obama, Barack Obama, the president, Barack Hussein Obama, on the campaign to get him elected as president and re-elected as president. And Julius has so many insights about how to run cultural campaigns and how to basically, you have to imagine after 9/11, he had a candidate whose name was Barack Hussein Obama and who was black and had no recognition in the country and nothing to go with, no great funding. And how to create a campaign, a grassroots movement that gets someone like Barack Obama into the White House, and how do you structure a campaign like that? Julius is going to share that with us. And we picked a perfect car for him because you can see there's no car around here, at least none that I would put Julius in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out my car sharing app and I'm going to pick a car for him because the future is on demand, right? There's cars out there. I'll just get one. Let's pick a BMW i3. I think that's very fitting, right? Electric, German, and yet it has a little bit of an American appeal. So pulling it up right now and it's coming. Can't wait to get him in the car. Julius van der Laar, BMW i3, cultural campaigning. Let's do this.
There he is.
I don't know how to stop this car. I'll come out to you.
You come out to me.
People already moving out because of you? Good to see you.
Good to see you, man.
Let's go for a ride.
Hey.
It's not a cop-out. There's a story to this.
I would imagine.
You would imagine.
There's always a story.
There's always a story.
There's got to be a story. Here we go. Oh, that's nice.
This is, first of all, it's the only car that actually our size. We got leg room.
Well, it's good. And it's the future.
Two things. First,
yeah,
electrifying the masses.
That's what it's about.
You like it?
I like it. That's the season title, right?
I've been thinking about this, you know?
That's good.
We needed a car which could get the message across, electrifying the masses. And the other thing is, you always drive now.
I do.
Car sharing.
Well, I'm actually more about the car to go.
Yeah.
Because they got the slogan "Proud to Share."
But they merged.
I know.
I got that happening just for you.
I appreciate it, but the slogan "Proud to Share," I think that's pure genius.
Plus, it's got your golden rule. It's only 3 words. Easy to remember. Lock her up, drain the swamp, proud to share.
So right in it.
Right in it.
Excellent.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. So here we go.
Here we go.
Off to the races. Where are you taking us today?
What do you think?
I think we should see some sights.
I think the first sight that we have to see is...
Well, it's clear the Brandenburg Gate.
Close, but no cake.
The
where did we actually meet first? But we didn't know we were there at the same time.
Siegessäule.
That's right.
That's obvious, right? So Siegessäule. Tell me your story about the Siegessäule.
You know, like any European, I wanted to vote for Barack Obama.
Yes.
Without knowing why exactly. I had no idea about his agenda. I just saw the guy and I was like, I want to shoot hoops with him.
Right.
I want to meet him.
Right.
And I'm going to vote for him, even though I can't. Right. There's just something about the accessibility and the message that he had where you fell in love with it. Right. It was. Yeah. Right. There was something magical. And I had a feeling this is going to be one of those moments I want to be there with my kids. I want to experience it. Right. And I remember I had Cassia on my shoulders and we were there. And I mean, also in the sense of, just like you, I do a lot of speaking, right? I learned so much from listening to him, the cadence, the repetitions he has. There's a craft to the way he speaks. That's true. Where, you know, it's not improvised. You can see that there's a script behind it, what he's doing, and you can see that he's been doing this a lot. But there's this what I later found out, this almost like sermon-like quality to it. Right. And you just connect. I connected with it, and I remember.
And it even gets more when you go to church with him. When he speaks at church.
Have you seen that?
Yeah. Back in the primaries of 2008. So back in 2007, leading up to the primaries, went to church with then Senator Obama in Greenville, South Carolina.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he gave a sermon at a church.
Okay.
And the way he spoke, just slightly, but changed and sort of fitted into the space of a church. And I
What
thought
would
that
you
was
change?
quite
What was it? What was the subtlety?
Well, it wasn't just like,
There was a lot more God in there.
well, certainly. But you also saw, and I think this is probably easier to follow for people, when he spoke in Charleston after the horrific shooting there. It was sort of a gospel versus a political speech.
Yeah.
And I think he managed to connect with people in a different way than he would when he, you know, gives the State of the Union on the floor of the Capitol.
The nerve that you touched for me is that, especially when I look at it in an organizational context, most people are trying to replicate the mechanics without understanding the underlying. There needs to be a driver. You know, like slowly people like Gary Hamel are also putting this out in the narratives that all these people who've changed their organizations fundamentally, they had a sort of socializing, some personal narrative that connected. And then the mechanics are sound, they can be applied, but the mechanics in themselves
will never work. And I think this is exactly the story of the Clinton campaign in 2016. I mean, you pretty much had the playbook for how to run a campaign in the modern age with Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012.
Here we are, by the way.
Here we are. The Goldhälse.
The Goldhälse victory column.
So you were standing right here when Barack Obama delivered that speech?
Yeah, I think we were facing the other way, right? So we're going around it a couple of times. But,
Let me just jot this anecdote. So we're sitting in St. Louis, Missouri at that moment. And, you know, it's the usual grind of the campaign. So you focus on daily numbers and fundraising, all the different things that are happening. And so we turn on the TV because I'm like, Barack Obama's speaking in Berlin today. We got to watch it. And they're like, well, you know, let's see how big this is going to get. And they're like, we need at least 10,000 people to show up for a, you know, decent coverage because it's going to be embarrassing. But the campaign didn't know.
Okay.
I mean, we're like, let's hope this is going to be big, but nobody knew how big it's going to get.
And let's not forget, he wasn't allowed to speak at Brandenburg Gate because he was only a candidate, right?
Right, and Angela Merkel said at that moment that, you know, this is reserved for presidents, right. And then he delivers that speech, and of course, I was just livid and just fired up that Barack Obama drew that kind of crowd in Berlin. So that was fantastic.
I remember at some point they had to close it because there were too many people coming, and they couldn't ensure security for it. And we were in the middle of it, and actually at some point it got kind of scary because I was there with two little kids, right? And then you know, whenever the crowd gets too big, I kind of go, you know, but especially since here you can see that it is kind of a confined space, like you can't branch out, but it's just.
Man, but you got to witness history, and so did your kids, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The thing you're saying about organizations, and it starts with, you know, leadership, and that has to start with the candidate, not the campaign. You can't just take the mechanics. And I think this is one of the things that we saw during the Clinton campaign. They took the best data analysts, some from the Obama campaign. They had more money than anyone, $1.3 billion, right, compared to the $800 million of Donald Trump. And you can't just take the machinery. You got to have the right message at the right moment. I always like to think of campaigns as an answer. There has to be some sort of question that's out there, and campaigns should answer that question.
The whole thing that blew up now with the coastal elites, and there's another part of America that needs an answer too, right? I think you need to answer two questions right now almost, and who can be that person who answers two questions at once?
Right. The two questions are, why me, and why now?
Yeah.
And I think this is what any leader should ask themselves: why me?
Yeah.
So what do I bring? And why right now? Why not in a couple of years?
And what I mean is that right now you have two audience for which the why me and why now are so different.
Right.
In the States.
In the States, when it comes to politics, right?
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So what would you say, what was the hardest part? I mean, you know, you gave me that idea to watch The War Room, that movie where it really goes to the heart of the
1992 campaign of Bill Clinton. Right.
Yeah, but what did you find, like, what was the most arduous part of the campaigning?
During the presidential campaign, of course, I mean, they're the fantastic moments, the debates, the things you work towards to where you know this, you know, the candidate shows up, you get your volunteers in front of the candidate and they get to meet him, and things are going to be glamorous. But for the most part, it is the fundamentals, right? You figure out how do you get the message of the day across. You don't worry about winning the year, the campaign. You don't worry about winning the month. You worry about winning the day, every day, right? And you take a look, of course, at the other candidates as well. You see what they're doing, but you want to knock on the most doors that very day. You want to make the most phone calls. You want to raise the most money that particular day. You want to make sure that your story is told in the media that's relevant.
One of the many things that resonated with me in the speech that I watched from you was how do we overcome the cynicism, right? Just like in an electorate, in a population of employees, you usually have this, yeah, whatever the next promise is. I know it's not going to filter down me. They're going to give me anything so they get my vote, and then nothing's going to materialize for me. And there's this, I won't even engage in this shit anymore, right? And I think with Trump, there was a visceral quality of, if I don't get anything, at least I'll stick it to them.
Right.
You know, so, and in organizations, you often have the same thing, that people have kind of resigned inwardly and they take opportunities to stick it to the man, you know, but they don't believe in leaders anymore to really deliver on what they're promising. And that's what people yearn for in organizations. What is it that I can count on from you? Like, where's the loyalty beyond do your job and you get free food in the cafeteria? Like, how can I connect what I'm doing? What's meaningful for me? I think people are yearning for meaning, and that's the same for leaders as for employees. Right?
I mean, it goes back to trust, and this is what everyone is looking for in a candidate, and probably in an organization from a employee level, but also these days from a customer level. I think this is something where I've seen probably the biggest shift in the last 1 or 2 years. Or if you look at companies like Nike or Gillette now, where companies are sort of, you know, in public, are wrangling with those questions of who are we, what are our values.
They found us.
They found us.
Shit.
Go.
Yeah, hit it. We put this thing into, where's warp here? Is there an insane mode on a BMW i3?
Yeah.
No.
It's pretty insane.
Pretty insane.
It's pretty energized. But no, I mean, companies are grappling with those questions right now. But you can't always try to make it right for everyone. But I mean, this is also what campaigns are about, right? I mean, they're not about dividing people up, but they're about to present a clear choice. And, you know, a good campaign will also deliver some sort of crossroads. It's like you either take path A together with me into the future, into the sunset, or you take part B, path B, with Heiko into the absolute abyss, right? And so people have to decide, you know.
You didn't even have to make that one up, huh?
Yeah, well, it's
you've clearly given that example before. What would an Obama do to get the information that he's moving away from more and more, right? Because you're moving up and you get more ass kissers, people who filter messages. How did he connect with people at the base?
I mean, you know, whether it's Winterkorn or whether it's Obama, they don't get the easy decisions anymore, right? I mean, every easy decision has been made on the 150 steps leading up to the Resolute desk in the Oval Office.
Yeah.
They get the shitty decisions. They get the 51-49 decisions, right?
Yeah.
But how do you still stay connected? I mean, you go out, and I think this is something that the Obama presidency and Obama as president didn't do in the first 2 years of office. He didn't leave the White House, and I think this is also when he, you know, didn't manage to connect anymore, when he didn't manage to sell the healthcare reform effectively. So you got to still get out of the Oval Office, and you got to still make sure that you're out there talking to people, driving your cars, buying your computers, or whatever it is that you're selling, right?
Normal life. Yeah.
Normal life. Now, I don't think a politician needs to know everything that's on any shelf in the grocery store. But I do think they should probably...
As a representative question.
Right, no, absolutely. But I think they should understand, you know, what's the price of gas and how does that resonate for a normal tax-paying person? Can they still afford to take their kids to school every day if they have to fill up the car? Yeah. And so you got to be in touch with normal issues, right?
This road that we're just exiting from,
right?
Do you know this used to be a racetrack, the Avas?
It did, yeah.
During the Third Reich, right? So Hitler basically had this built for showing German superiority in racing, cars here going 400 kilometers an hour. And I mean, would you say that back then the Nazi Party had this logic down too, this campaigning?
I mean, there's so much written about goals and the way Nazi propaganda worked. I mean, if you go back and you look at documentaries, you look at...
Let me ask you a different way.
Sure.
What would you say is the main differentiator between the campaign that we stand for and what they stood for back then? Was it just we fill it with different meaning, a different ideology, or was there something different about it?
I mean, I just notice how everything in my body just turns comparing the two.
Yeah.
And I think a campaign is always driven by its meaning, what it's for. I mean, you're not going to work for campaigns that you don't believe in. I don't. And so a campaign always starts with why we're doing it. We don't run campaigns, or at least I don't want to work for politicians who want to be politicians. I want to work for politicians who set out to change something, right?
Yeah.
Or business leaders who say, we want to do something different.
Yeah.
We don't want to work for people who just say, well, I want to look, extremely good when I'm on stage giving the keynote at the South by Southwest or whatever, right? I will just say from when it boiled down, or what it came down for me, were all those aspects in the Obama campaign where Barack Obama said the right things from a policy perspective, but he also gave me the idea that he set out on this mission with loftier ideals than just the pure politics of, I will get this done through X, Y, and Z. He wanted to get it done for the right reasons. I think this is what mobilized me. And so I think this is an approach that, anyone during communication and outreach these days should absolutely incorporate. You should figure out what works and what doesn't work, and you shouldn't just look at what do I like, what does Heiko like. Certainly not what Heiko likes. But what does my core audience want and need, and how do I tailor my message to them?
And actually, I have to say, I mean, we're joking about this now, but for me, it's a problem in the sense that when, I guess an Obama has internalized his message so much that it's actually, you kind of have to remove yourself from yourself to be able to say, how does that resonate with somebody else?
Right.
What language do I need to use so they get what I've understood for me without words?
Right.
I might be the worst person to do this. Maybe I need to talk to someone who acts as a translator or says, based on the data, if we put it in these words that you might hate.
Right. But I think that's also important. The narrative doesn't change based on testing. I mean, there are politicians who will, we have some powerful leaders in Germany who do exactly that, governing by polls. But your fundamentals, your understanding, the things that you want to get done, shouldn't be influenced by polls. You should understand what you're running for. But the way you deliver that message, you should target that and address it in the best way possible, and this is what you need data for, of course.
And I think what will take us now to the kitchen, literally, of my home.
From the church, the car.
The church.
The German church.
Yeah, we go to the kitchen. I think very few candidates or leaders probably understand the moment, the crucial moments. There's this astronaut, Lovell, and he said, if we had known we would be making history, we probably would have done our hair nicer. So
just like you today.
Absolutely, just like me today. That if we don't understand that right now is a crucial decision point, we can't make a good decision, right? Let's get coffee.
Let's do that.
So, espresso or coffee? What is your choice?
I'll have a coffee.
You'll have a coffee?
Yes, sir.
Because look, we're going all green in the household.
Boy, no more plastic?
My wife.
Aside from the Lego?
We're putting all that stuff, all the plastic is invested in Lego. So. But no, I mean, seriously, would you, I'm so proud that my 6-year-old did this.
This is pretty sweet.
It's pretty sweet, right?
Yeah.
It also kind of puts it in relation that when you walk around the house and you think about your accomplishments, they're like, yeah, you're 40, and he's 6 and he can do that. What did I do with the other 30 odd years, Well, but at least you can say, I'm grinding.
You're grinding.
What I heard from your speech back then was 2% name recognition, 20 volunteers, and about $20,000 in the bank, right?
I mean...
And you were talking about a meritocracy, right? Where you can you can come from that background, and you don't have to have the Clinton or the Bush legacy behind you, and you can still make it.
Right. And obviously, Barack Obama in every way is a unique, I mean, the audacity of hope. It is a very unique moment in time. I mean, keep in mind it was George W. Bush, Afghanistan, Iraq, the financial meltdown of the fall of 2008. So this is the backdrop in which Obama's candidacy was even possible, right? But, you know, again, we put out a poll and asked people, have you heard the name Barack Obama? And it was about 2.8% who had heard the name before. I mean, try to launch a product with, you know, 2.8% people out there had heard it, and you have to get to a market share of 51%. Right? It's almost impossible with no money, no infrastructure, and a product that's named Barack Hussein Obama, right? So this is impossible. But he managed to do it, especially considering that he went up against Hillary Clinton, who had a name recognition of 99%, had, you know, all the access to money that you could hope for, had the entire machinery and the infrastructure behind her. So that story that, you know, overcoming the impossible, I think that is unique to America.
One of the fundamental DNA ingredients for me of this American entrepreneurial spirit is learning, right? They don't fail in the same thing twice.
Right.
Maybe Hillary did in a way, you know, but the usual thing is that they have very pragmatic learnings that they manage to extract. So their spirit of, if you fail, that's fine, just try again and don't make the same mistake. I think we're one step before that, where we're talking about it's actually okay to fail, right? But we're not talking yet about an extra, what is your learning? What is it that you won't do again? How will you fail in new spectacular ways, right? And I think that's just much more ingrained in their culture. This didn't work. You know, I was working in a bakery, then I tried a car shop, and now I'm an investment banker. And that's normal, right? Whereas here, I'm like, well, you're done as a baker. I guess that's it for you. 33 years over, right? Like, that an American would be like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know, like, there's a job over there. But it's dry cleaning. I've never done dry cleaning. It pays the bills. Go, you know? It's like, we're holding 3 jobs at once.
Well, and there's also this idea that you can always reinvent yourself.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
We're talking in the car about testing, and I think that goes hand in hand with sort of progressing up. And, you know, to business, to campaigns, one of the biggest mistakes you can make is not test. I mean, you should take calculated guesses and risks, of course, but to test is sort of to test whether you're on the right track. You know, put out option A, put out option B. Now, if you never do that, you're probably going to stay on a relatively straight trajectory of where you're going to go. You know, it might take a gut decision and it might work, might not work. So you're probably not going to do it. You're just going to stay straight. Now, if you test, you know, it could go up, it could go down. But odds are that if you test, you do a multiple tests, you're going to go even faster. But every time you move up a little bit quicker.
There's one thing that I found always fascinating when we talk to organizations about this logic of applying a network rather than a hierarchy, which I always found the network of volunteers is sort of the same thing. They're intrinsically motivated by the message of the candidate. They're not going there. I mean, you might have obviously something that is in it for you to say, I study political sciences, so I will learn something along the way, but you couldn't learn as much if you didn't actually believe in the message, right? So it's a network of volunteers who come together and try to create an end goal for the candidate, right? And then it's going from 20 people to 200 to 2,000 to how many were you in the end? And I was like,
altogether, I think it was 1 million volunteers.
Yeah, that's like crazy, right? And then people would be like, yeah, but who coordinated that, Julius? Like, there must have been one guy with a master plan, right? Who coordinated all of them. How do you coordinate 1 million people? Like, how does that work?
Well, it's, you know, you go back to bottom-up organizing. And, I mean, it did result from a clear vision of where you needed to go and clear goals that resulted from that vision. So, you know, in the end, we knew 270 electoral votes on election day to become president, right? We knew we were going to get those electoral votes. For instance, we needed 18 out of Ohio. And so the question becomes, how do we get to 51% in Ohio? Well, there might be Cuyahoga County that we need to win, a bunch of other different counties, a bunch of different districts, and so on and so forth. So where are our hardcore Democrats that will always turn out? Do we need to talk to them? No. They always turn out, so don't talk to them. We're the hardcore Republicans.
Yeah.
We're never going to talk to them either because we're not going to change our minds, right? And so the next question might be, well, where are voters who might be open to the idea to vote for Barack Obama, but need a little nudging, need some explanation on healthcare? Well, this is what we're going to send.
Why him? Why now?
Why him? Why now?
So why you?
Right. So we're going to send Heiko, who lives next door, who can talk to them and be like, well, look, I know your dad as well. Your kids go to the same school as my kids. Let me talk to you about Barack Obama and why I think he's the right candidate, right? So you're one of our volunteers going out and knocking on all the doors. Then there might also be some people who would vote for Barack Obama if they only showed up to vote, right?
Okay.
So you just now were the persuasion. Now this is the low propensity voter that we need to turn out.
Okay.
And so you have your different buckets of people. Now this is the strategic aspect of the campaign. Now, strategic.
Lockbox.
Nuclear. Nuclear.
Great. Now
Thank
I
you,
will
George.
fare in my head now.
But
Well, wait now.
but now it comes back to actually gathering all those volunteers, people who are inspired by Barack Obama's or any candidate's message, right? But now you need to give people the tools and create a theory of change. And I think this is what the Bernie Sanders campaign, the Obama campaign, any good campaign does. They're like, this is where we want to get. We want to get to healthcare for everyone. We want to get to affordable college tuition for everyone. This is our overall
This is our
vision,
end zone.
right? This is our end zone. Now, how do we get there? Is it the Hail Mary? We'll just select the guy? Or do we work every day to get there? Now, you do 10 doors today. You do 5 phone calls, and you give $20 for XYZ. And I think this is the way you organize it overall. And this is sort of how you explain it to volunteers, that there is a theory of change. By doing this, this is how it fits into the bigger picture and how we actually reach the red zone where we can score.
So how would you do that when you have your volunteer community, your local base?
Right.
And you're working towards the goal of, I don't know, we need to get 16 electoral colleges in ours. How would you communicate big learnings to the other parts of the network? Or big fuck-ups?
Right. I mean, the very first part is to secure commitment. And in the very early stages of the campaign, and I think this is the same that's true for a new CEO who comes in, don't do the big town hall. Sit down like this over coffee. Ideally not at Starbucks, but in your office or in your home, and say
in the kitchen.
Right? This is what my goals are. What's motivating you? You drop your pants, and you actually have some sort of connection. And once you've established what the purpose is, you got to make the ask. You can say, well, what can you do to advance that idea? And this is where I get your commitment to help me out. And I say, well, I need you to recruit 10 more people, and I need you to knock on 20 more doors, and I need you to donate. Are you willing to do that? Well, great. And then I'm going to ask you, if we're in a campaign now, well, actually, I see there's a bunch of people around us too, neighbors over there. Can't you commit to doing a house meeting? I'm going to come. You're going to bake some cookies or buy some. You're going to make coffee, and we're going to invite your neighbors, and I get to speak to those. Well, now you already established as a volunteer leader, and I can, hope at least that you're going to go out and manage those other volunteers as well. So it's sort of like a snowflake model that we employ. Pretty much at this point top down, but by empowering you to take ownership of your community of volunteers, by sharing the goals and actually breaking them down to you and explaining to you how your commitment and the work that you do fit into a bigger picture. I'm transforming ownership from the top of the campaign down to you, and you have a stake in accomplishing that goal. I think the Obama campaign was a prime example of an organization that was willing to look at data from every aspect of the campaign, from volunteer data that was being gathered, from TV purchases or media buys that we would do to where the candidate was being sent, and sort of filtered back into every decision that was being made afterwards.
Yeah, though, I think the biggest differentiation there for me between your campaign experience and organizations is there was already a mindset and a willingness to go out and get the information because you wanted to be successful in your part of the organization, right? So you made any tool work to say, what lessons can I learn? What else can I talk to make it work for me? Whereas in many organizations, you have this, well, cater to me and I'll do the best job I can. Right. But I'm not actively going out there and trying to bust my ass to get all this done. There's still this inertia in the organization to say, I'm getting paid until 5 and then I'm going home. Right. You know, so all the tools in the world cannot overcome that mindset and that cynicism. And if you don't turn that first into, well, what are we doing it for? Right. And it's always fascinating with organizations how long it takes them to define their why.
Absolutely. Let me just stipulate one more thing. We had a theory of change, and that theory of change is, of course, put Barack Obama in the White House, and he will get healthcare accomplished and all those other things. But I think one of the most critical things that Obama said was, this election has never been about me, it's always been about you. And to Obama, it was always clear that the election part was the easy part of the job, that actually once being in the White House, that's when it got tough. But it was also that it wasn't just putting him into the Oval Office to make those decisions. He said that if you actually want to change, everyone had to get involved. And you know, by knocking on doors, making phone calls, donating money, that was just the first part. But you actually had to be an active participant of government. And if you fast forward to the 2018 midterm elections, you had a record number of candidates who weren't part of the establishment Democratic class, right? Mm-hmm. You had young people, a lot of people who started on the campaign trail with me who ran for Congress and who are now, you know, sitting congressmen, congresswomen, right? And so I think that message actually resonated, that change comes from the bottom up, not from the top down.
What I took away from your speech about Obama was to create this shared meaning. Right. And then it's almost innate that people want to challenge all the systems and employ any means because they believe in the end goal. And all those things are like byproducts. They want to learn. They want to get better. Whereas other teams that are not so motivated and not so bought into the purpose, you have to kind of spell it out for them. You have to chew it for them. You have to say, take this tool and now do this in that tool. But basically, you're not addressing the main problem, which is, look, I don't really care if that candidate gets elected or not. Right? And then no technology will solve that problem.
Never. I mean, it goes back to, you know, leadership by numbers and giving orders by numbers, or, you know, through a narrative approach and storytelling, right? There's always the story of self. You know, what is my story and how does it fit into a broader context? But there's also the story of us. You know, how do we together address this moment in time? And you can go back to the moonshot in Kennedy, and there's this great example, of course, how you know, he shows up and he meets the security guy, and he's like, "So what is your role here?" And he's like, "You know, I'm helping put a man on the moon." And so it's like, how do we create a story where the purpose translates down to everyone involved in the organization? And, you know, even though you might not be here to see the end game and the end result, you know, the path is so critical, and you give a meaning to it, and you take someone on that journey to create something that's bigger than, you know, any question of how hard you push the button or pull that lever or what it might be. That's what I think leadership is ultimately about.
And for me, this is the ever ongoing primary for me, if you want, is that what I took away from everything I've learned from you, which was a tremendous amount from just the short speech and all the conversations we had, this, when I talk to leaders and I say organizations can be vessels for good, they can be incubators for all that is good about humanity, and you can prove certain things out, like if AI is going to come and AI were a reflection of your company, make it one worthwhile, make it one not killing us, make it one that wouldn't see you as a replaceable resource yourself. If we are to make the steps to colonize new planets, are we worth it? Have we destroyed our own planet and need to go there because we're in search of a new home, or have we figured out our problems at home and we're spreading that knowledge and that attitude to the solar system, right? Like all these
questions, I think they are maybe not exactly in our lifetime, but they're coming, they're imminent,
right.
These questions, right? And what I've taken away from you was, again, this whatever name we want to give it right now, just, campaigning approach to make your organization something meaningful and not just profitable, right?
I think that's it. The purpose campaign.